episode of Papayas Per Usual. We are on part 9 of The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Well, part 9 of the episodes, but we are going to be starting from chapter 14. A little recap what happened last time is, let's see. So, it looks like Dorian, or Basil Howard, has gone to Dorian's house. And they were talking about being able to see souls. And, Basil is, or Basil, one of those. Basil is slightly angering Dorian, as Dorian has committed many other sins than the first one of his projected wife that he shamed, basically, and made her kill herself. And then on chapter 13, Dorian killed Basil after showing him the portrait of himself that has become grotesque and ugly with sin and age and wrinkles. So we're going to be continuing from chapter 14. Let us begin. At 9 o'clock the next morning, his servant came in with a cup of chocolate on a tray and opened the shutters. Dorian was sleeping quite peacefully, lying on his right side, with one hand underneath his cheek. He looked like a boy who had been tired out with the play or study. The man had to touch him twice on the shoulder before he woke, and as he opened his eyes, a faint smile passed across his lips, as though he had been lost in some delightful dream. Yet he had not dreamed at all. His night had been untroubled by any images of pleasure or of pain, but youth smiles without any reason. It is one of his chiefest charms. It is one of his chiefest charms. He turned round and, leaning upon his elbow, began to sip his chocolate. The mellow November sun came streaming into the room. The light was bright, and there was a gentile warmth in the air. It was almost like a morning in May. Gradually, the events of the preceding night crept with silent, blood-stained feet into his brain, and reconstructed themselves there with terrible distinctness. He winced at the memory of all that he had suffered, and for a moment the same curious feeling of loathing for Basil Howard that had made him kill him as he sat in the chair came back to him, and he grew cold with passion. The dead man was still sitting there too, and in the sunlight now. How horrible that was! Such hideous things were for the darkness, not for the day. He felt that if he brooded on what he had gone through, he would sicken or grow mad. There were sins whose fascination was more in memory than in the doing of them. Strange triumphs that gratified the pride more than the passions, and gave to the intellect a quickened sense of joy, greater than any joy they brought, or could ever bring, to the senses. But this was not one of them. It was the thing to be driven out of the mind, to be drugged with poppies, to be strangled lest it might strangle itself. When the half-hour struck, he passed his hand across his forehead, and then he got up hastily and dressed himself with more than his usual care, giving a good deal of attention to the choice of his necktie and scarf pin, and changing his rings more than once. He spent a long time also over breakfast, tasting the various dishes, talking to his valet about some new liveries that he was thinking of getting made for the servants at Selby, and going through his correspondence. At some of the letters he smiled. 3 of them bored him. One he read several times over, then tore up with a slight look of annoyance in his face. That's an awful thing, a woman's memory, as Lord Henry had once said. After he had drunk his cup of black coffee, he wiped his lips slowly with a napkin, mentioned to his servant to wait, and going over to the table, sat down and wrote 2 letters. One he put in his pocket, the other he handed to the valet. Take this round to 152 Hertford Street, Francis, and if Mr. Campbell is out of town, get his address. As soon as he was alone, he lit a cigarette and began sketching upon a piece of paper, drawing first flowers and bits of architecture and then human faces. Suddenly he remarked that every face that he drew seemed to have a fantastic likeness to Basil Hallward. He frowned, and getting up, went over to the bookcase and took out a volume at hazard. He was determined that he would not think about what had happened until it became absolutely necessary that he should do so. When he had stretched himself on the sofa, he looked at the title page of the book. It was Gaudier's Amongst et Cames, Charpentier's Japanese paper edition, with a jack-marked edging. The binding was of citron green leather, with a design of gilded trellis work and dotted pomegranates. It had been given to him by Adrian Singleton. As he turned over the pages, his eyes fell on the poem about the hand of Lacenaire, the cold yellow hand, du supplice en corps malave, with its downy red hairs and its doigets de faune. He glanced at his own white taper fingers, shuddering slightly in spite of himself, and passed on, till he came to those lovely stanzas upon Venice. Apologies, I'm going to butcher this very, very much right now. Sur un gamme chromatique, l'essayant de Paris, Roussillante, la finesse de l'adriquet, sorte de l'eau, son corps rose et blanc, les stones sur l'azur des ondes, suivant la phrase arbor cantor. S'invent comme des gorges rondes, qui soulevent un support d'amour. L'esquive aborde et me dispose. Je tente son amare au pelia. Devant un facet de rose, sur le marbre d'un escalier. How exquisite they were! As one read them, one seemed to be floating down the green waterways of the pink and pearl city, seated in a black gondola with silver prow and trailing curtains. The mere lines looked to him like those straight lines of turquoise blue that follow one, as one pushes out to the Lido. The sudden flashes of color reminded him of the gleam of the opal and iris-throated birds that flutter around the tall honeycombed campanile, or stalk, with such stately grace through the dim, dust-stained arcades. Leaning back with half-closed eyes, he kept saying over and over to himself, Devant un facet de rose, sur le marbre d'un escalier. The whole of Venice was in those 2 lines. He remembered the autumn that he had passed there, and a wonderful love that stirred him to mad, delightful follies. There was romance in every place, but Venice, like Oxford, had kept that background for romance, and to the true romantic background was everything, or almost everything. Basil had been with him part of the time, and had gone wild over Tintoret. Poor Basil. way for a man to die. He sighed and took up the volume again and tried to forget. He read of the swallows that fly in and out of the little cafe at Cimbria, where the hetchies sit counting their amber heads and the turbaned merchants smoke their long, tasseled pipes and talk gravely to each other. He read of the obelisk in the Place de la Concorde that weeps tears of granite in its lonely, sunless exile and longs to be back by the hot, lotus-covered Nile, where there are sphinxes and rose-red ibises, and white vultures with gilded claws and crocodiles with small feral eyes that crawl over the green, steaming mud. He began to brood over those verses which, drawing music from kiss-stained marble, tell of that curious statue that Gaudier compares to a contralto voice, the monstre charmant, that couches in the porphyry room of the Lavoyer. But after a time the book fell from his hands. He grew nervous, and a horrible fit of terror came over him. What if Alan Campbell should be out of England? Days would elapse before he could come back. Perhaps he might refuse to come. What could he do then? Every moment was of vital importance. They had been great friends once, 5 years before, almost inseparable indeed. Then the intimacy had come suddenly to an end. When they met in society now, it was only Dorian Gray who smiled. Alan Campbell never did. He was an extremely clever young man, though he had no real appreciation of the visible arts, and whatever little sense of the beauty of poetry he possessed he gained entirely from Dorian. His dominant intellectual passion was for science. At Cambridge he had spent a great deal of his time working in the laboratory, and had taken a good class in the natural science tripos of his year. Indeed, he was still devoted to the study of chemistry, and he had a laboratory of his own in which he used to shut himself up all day long. Greatly to the annoyance of his mother, who had set her heart on his standing for Parliament, and had a vague idea that a chemist was a person who made up prescriptions. He was a musician. He was an excellent musician, however, as well, and played both the violin and the piano better than most amateurs. In fact, it was music that first brought him and Dorian Gray together. Music, and that indefinable attraction that Dorian seems to be able to exercise whenever he wished, and indeed exercised often without being conscious of it. They had met at Lady Berkshire's the night that Rubinstein played there, and after that they used to always be seen together at the opera and wherever good music was going on. For 18 months, their intimacy lasted. Campbell was always either at Selby Royal or at Grosvenor Square. To him, as to many others, Dorian Gray was the type of everything that is wonderful and fascinating in life. Whether or not a quarrel had taken place between them, no one ever knew. But suddenly people remarked that they scarcely spoke when they met, and that Campbell always seemed to go away early from any party at which Dorian Gray was present. He had changed too. Was strangely melancholic at times, appeared almost to dislike hearing music, and would never himself play, giving as his excuse, when he was called upon, that he was so absorbed in science that he had no time left in which to practice. And this was certainly true. Every day he seemed to become more interested in biology, and his name appeared once or twice in some of the scientific reviews in connection with certain curious experiments. This was the man Dorian Gray was waiting for. Every second he kept glancing at the clock. As the minutes went by, he became horribly agitated. At last he got up and began to pace up and down the room, looking like a beautiful cage stealthy strides. His hands were curiously cold. The suspense became unbearable. Time seemed to him to be crawling with feet of lead. When he, by monstrous winds, was being swept towards the jagged edge of some black cleft of precipice. He knew what was waiting for him there, saw it indeed, and, shuddering, crushed with dank hands his burning lids as though he would have robbed the very brain of sight, and driven the eyeballs back into their cave. It was useless. The brain had its own food on which it fattened, and the imagination, made grotesque by terror, twisted and distorted as a living thing by pain, danced like some foul puppet on a stand and grinned through moving masks. Then, suddenly, time stopped for him. Yes, that blind, slow-breathing thing crawled no more, and horrible thoughts, time being dead, raced nimbly on in front and dragged a hideous future from its grave and showed it to him. He stared at it. It's very horrible. Its very horror made him stone. At last the door opened and his servant entered. He turned glazed eyes upon him. "Mr. Campbell, sir," said the man. A sigh of relief broke from his parched lips, and the color came back to his cheeks. "Ask him to come in at once, Francis." He felt that he was himself again. His mood of cowardice had passed away. The man bowed and retired. In a few moments, Alan Campbell walked in, looking very stern and rather pale, his pallor being intensified by his coal black hair and dark eyebrows. "Alan, this is kind of you. I thank you for coming. I intended never to enter your house again, Gray, but you said it was a matter of life and death." His voice was hard and cold. He spoke with slow deliberation, and there was a look of contempt in the steady, searching gaze that he turned on Dorian. He kept his hands in the pockets of his astrakhan coat, and seemed not to have noticed the gesture in which he had been greeted. "Yes, it is a matter of life and death, Alan, and more than one person. Sit down." Campbell took a chair by the table, and Dorian sat opposite to him. The two men's eyes met. In Dorian there was infinite pity. Excuse me, sorry. He knew that what he was going to do was dreadful. After a strained moment of silence, he leaned across and said, very quietly, but watching the effect of each word upon the face of him he had sent for. "Alan, in a locked room at the top of this house, a room to which nobody but myself has access, a dead man is seated at a table. He has been dead 10 hours now. Don't stir and don't look at me like that. Who the man is, why he died, and how he died are matters that do not concern you. What you have to do is this." "Stop, Gray. I don't want to know anything further. Whether what you have told me is true or not true doesn't concern me. I entirely decline to be mixed up in your life. Keep your horrible secrets to yourself. They don't interest me anymore. Alan, they will have to interest you. This one will have to interest you. I am awfully sorry for you, Alan, but I can't help myself. You are the one man who was able to save me. I am forced to bring you into the matter. I have no option, Alan. You are scientific. You know about chemistry and things of that kind. You have made experiments. What you have got to do is to destroy the thing that is upstairs. To destroy it so that not a vestige of it will be left. Nobody saw this person come into the house. Indeed, at the present moment he is supposed to be in Paris. He will not be missed for months. When he is missed. There must be no trace of him found here. You, Alan, you must change him, and everything that belongs to him into a handful of ashes that I may scatter into the air. You are mad, Dorian. I was waiting for you to call me Dorian. You are mad, I tell you. Mad to imagine that I would raise a finger to help you. Mad to make this monstrous confession. I'll have nothing to do with this matter, whatever it is. Do you think I'm going to peril my reputation for you? What is it to me? What devil's work you are up to? It was suicide, Alan. I am glad of that, but who drove him to it? You, I should fancy. Do you still refuse to do this for me? Oh. What? Testing, testing. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if it picked up what I said, but I said curious on why the two had a falling out. Anyways, we will continue. Of course I refuse. I have absolutely nothing to do with it. I don't care what shame comes on you. You deserve it all. I should not be sorry to see you disgraced, publicly disgraced. How dare you ask me, of all men in the world, to mix myself up in this horror? I should have thought you knew more about people's character. Your friend Lord Henry Wilde can't have taught you much about psychology. Whatever else he has taught you, nothing will induce me to stir a step to help you. You have come to the wrong man. Go to some of your friends, don't come to me. Ellen, it was murder. I killed him. You don't know what he had made me suffer. Whatever my life is, he had more to do with the making or the marring of it than poor Harry has. He might not have intended it, but the result was the same. Murder? Good God, Dorian, is that what you have come to? I shall not inform you upon it. It is not my business. Besides, without my stirring in the matter, you are certainly to be arrested. Nobody ever commits a crime without doing something stupid. But I will have nothing to do with it. You must have something to do with it. Wait a moment. Listen to me. Only listen, Alan. All I ask of you is to perform a certain scientific experiment. You go to hospitals and dead houses, and the horrors that you do there don't affect you. If in some hideous dissecting room or fetid laboratory you found this man lying on a leaden table, with red gutters scooped out in it for the blood to flow through, you would simply look upon him as an admirable subject. You would not turn a hair. You would not believe that you were doing anything wrong. On the contrary, you would probably feel that you were benefiting the human race, or increasing the sum of knowledge in the world, or gratifying intellectual curiosity, or something of that kind. What I want you to do is merely what you have often done before. Indeed, to destroy a body must be far less horrible than what you are accustomed to work at. And remember, it is the only piece of evidence against me. If it is discovered, I am lost, and it is sure to be discovered unless you help me. I have no desire to help you. You forget that. I am simply indifferent to the whole thing. It has nothing to do with me. Alan, I entreat you. Think of the position I am in. Just before you came, I almost fainted with terror. Alan, I entreat you. Think of the position I am in. Just before you came, I almost fainted with terror. You know, terror yourself. You may know terror yourself someday. No, don't think of that. Look at the matter purely from the scientific point of view. You don't inquire where the dead things on which you experiment come from. Don't inquire now. I have told you too much as it is. I beg of you to do this. We were friends once, Alan. Don't speak about those days, Dorian. They are dead. The dead linger sometimes. The man upstairs will not go away. He is sitting at the table with bowed head and outstretched arms. Alan, Alan, if you don't come to my assistance, I am ruined. Why? They will hang me, Alan. Don't you understand? They will hang me for what I have done. There is no good in prolonging this scene. I absolutely refuse to do anything in the matter. It is insane of you to ask me. You refuse. Yes, I entreat you, Alan. It is useless. The same look of pity came into Dorian Gray's eyes. Then he outstretched his hand, took a piece of paper, and wrote something on it. He read it over twice, folded it carefully, and pushed it across the table. Having done this, he got up and went over to the window. Campbell looked at him in surprise, and then took up the paper and opened it. As he read it, his face became ghastly pale, and he fell back in his chair. A horrible sense of sickness came over him. He felt as if his heart were beating itself to death in some empty hollow. After 2 or 3 minutes of terrible silence, Dorian turned round and came and stood behind him, putting his hand upon his shoulder. I am so sorry for you, Alan, he murmured, but you leave me no alternative. I have a letter written already. Here it is. You see the address. If you don't help me, I must send it. If you don't help me, I will send it. You know what the result will be, but you are going to help me. It is impossible for you to refuse now. I tried to spare you. You will do me the justice to admit that. You were stern, harsh, offensive. You treated me as no man has ever dared to treat me. No living man, at any rate. I bore it all. Now it is for me to dictate terms. Campbell buried his face in his hands, and a shudder passed through him. Yes, it is my turn to dictate terms, Alan. You know what they are. The thing is quite simple. Come, don't work yourself into this fever. The thing has to be done. Face it and do it. A groan broke from Campbell's lips, and he shivered all over. The ticking of the clock on the mantelpiece seemed to him to be dividing time into separate atoms of agony, of which was too terrible to be borne. He felt as if an iron ring was being slowly tightened round his forehead, as if the disgrace with which he was threatened had already come upon him. His hand upon his shoulder weighed like a hand of lead. It was intolerable. It seemed to crush him. Come, Alan, you must decide at once. I cannot do it, he said mechanically, as though words could alter things. You must do it. You have no choice. Don't delay. He hesitated a moment. Is there a fire in the room upstairs? Yes, there is a gas fire with asbestos. I shall have to go home and get some things from the laboratory. No, Alan, you must not leave the house. Write out on a sheet of notepaper what you want, and my servant will take a cab and bring the things back to you. Campbell scrawled a few lines, blotted them, and addressed an envelope to his assistant. Dorian took the note up and read it carefully. Then he rang the bell and gave it to his valet, with orders to return as soon as possible and to bring the things with him. As the hall door shut, Campbell started nervously, and having got up from the chair, went over to the chimney-piece. He was shivering with a kind of ague. For nearly 20 minutes neither of the men spoke. A fly buzzed noisily round the room, and the ticking of the clock was like the beat of a hammer. As the chime struck one, Campbell turned round and, looking at Dorian Gray, saw that his eyes were filled with tears. There was something in the purity and refinement of that sad face that seemed to enrage him. "You are infamous, absolutely infamous," he muttered. "Hush, Ellen, you have saved my life," said Dorian. "Your life? Good heavens, what a life that is!" Excuse me for a moment. I must blow my nose. Your life, good heavens, what a life that is. You have gone from corruption to corruption, and now you have culminated in crime. And what I am going to do, what you force me to do, it is not of your life that I am thinking. Ah, Ellen, murmured Dorian with a sigh. I wish you had 1,000th part of the pity for me that I have for you. He turned away as he spoke and stood looking out at the garden. Campbell made no answer. After about 10 minutes, a knock came to the door, and the servant entered carrying a large mahogany chest of chemicals, with a long coil of steel and platinum wire, and 2 rather curiously shaped iron clamps. "Shall I leave the things here, sir?" he asked Campbell. "Yes," said Dorian, "and I'm afraid, Francis, that I have another errand for you." "What is the name of the man at Richmond who supplies Shelby with orchids?" "Arden, sir." "Yes, Arden. You must go down to Richmond at once. See Arden personally, and tell him to send twice as many orchids as I ordered, and to have as few white ones as possible. In fact, I don't want any white ones. It is a lovely day, Francis, and Richmond is a very pretty place. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother you about it." "No trouble, sir. At what time shall I be back?" Dorian looked at Campbell. "How long will your experiment take, Ellen?" he said in a calm, indifferent voice. The presence of a third person in the room seemed to give him extraordinary courage. Campbell frowned and bit his lip. "It will take about 5 hours," he answered. "It will be time enough then if you are back at 7:30, Francis. Or stay, just leave my things out for dressing. You can have the evening to yourself. I am not dining at home, so I shall not want you." "Thank you, sir," said the man, leaving the room. "Now, Ellen, there is not a moment to be lost. How heavy this chest is, I'll take it for you. You bring the other things." He spoke rapidly and in an authoritative manner. Campbell felt dominated by him. They left the room together. When they reached the top landing, Dorian took out the key and turned it in the lock. Then he stopped, and a troubled look came into his eyes. He shuddered. "I don't think I can go in, Ellen," he murmured. "It is nothing to me. I don't require you," said Campbell coldly. Dorian half opened the door. As he did so, he saw the face of his portrait leering in the sunlight. On the floor in front of it, in the torn curtain, was lying. He remembered that the night before he had forgotten. The first time in his life to hide the fatal canvas and was about to rush forward when he drew back with a shudder. What was that loathsome red dew that gleamed, wet and glistening, on one of the hands as though the canvas had sweated blood? How horrible it was! More horrible it seemed to him for the moment. Then the silent thing that he knew was stretched across the table. The thing was grotesque, misshapen shadow on the spotted carpet, and showed him that he had not stirred, but was still there as he had left it. He heaved a deep breath, opened the door a little wider, and with half-closed eyes and averted head walked quickly in. Determined that he would not look even once upon the dead man, then stooping down and taking up the gold and purple hanging, he flung it right over the picture. There he stopped, feeling afraid to turn around, and his eyes fixed themselves on the intricacies of the pattern before him. He heard Campbell bringing in the heavy chest and the irons and the other things that he had required for his dreadful work. He began to wonder if he and Basil Howard had ever met, and if so, what they had thought of each other. "Leave me now," said a stern voice behind him. He turned and hurried out, just conscious that the dead man had been thrust back into the chair and that Campbell was gazing into a glistening yellow face. As he was going downstairs, he heard the key being turned in the lock. It was long after 7 when Campbell came back into the library. He was pale but absolutely calm. "I have done what you asked me to do," he murmured, "and now goodbye. Let us never see each other again." "You have saved me from ruin, Alan. I cannot forget that," said Dorian. As soon as Campbell had left, he went upstairs. There was a horrible smell of nitric acid in the room, but the thing that had been sitting there at the table was gone. And that is the end of chapter 14. I'm going to be reading this next chapter in my normal voice because the whispering is somehow like not as soothing, or it takes more to whisper than it does to just speak in my normal volume. So I'm going to take a quick second though. A few moments, please. Alrighty, I am returned now. We are going to be continuing our reading from chapter 15. Here we go. That evening, at 8:30, exquisitely dressed and wearing a large buttonhole of Parma violets, Dorian Gray was ushered into Lady Narborough's drawing room by bowing servants. His forehead was throbbing with maddened nerves, and he felt wildly excited. But his manner as he bent over his hostess's hand was as easy and graceful as ever. Perhaps one never seems so much at one's ease as when one has to play a part. Certainly, no one looking at Dorian Gray that night could have believed that he had passed through a tragedy as horrible as any tragedy of our age. Those finely shaped fingers could never have clutched a knife for sin, nor those smiling lips have cried out on God and goodness. He himself could not wonder at the calm of his demeanor, and for a moment felt keenly the terrible pleasure of his double life. It was a small party, got up rather in a hurry by Lady Narborough, who was a very clever woman with what Lord Henry used to describe as the remains of a really remarkable ugliness. She had proved an excellent wife to one of our most tedious ambassadors. Interesting on how it has changed from, side note. Interesting on how it has changed from third person to a sort of first person with the hours. She had proved an excellent wife to one of our most tedious ambassadors, and having buried her husband properly in a marble mausoleum, which she had herself designed, and married off her daughters to some rich, rather elderly men, she devoted herself now to the pleasures of French fiction, French cookery, and French esprit, when she could get it. Dorian was one of her especial favorites, and she always told him that she was extremely glad she had not met him in early life. "I know, my dear, I should have fallen madly in love with you," she used to say, "and thrown my bonnet right over the mills for your sake. It is most fortunate that you were not thought of at the time." As it was, our bonnets were so unbecoming, and the mills were so occupied in trying to raise the wind, that I had never even a flirtation with anybody. However, that was all Narborough's fault. He was dreadfully short-sighted, and there is no pleasure in taking in a husband who never sees anything. Her guests this evening were rather tedious. The fact was, as she explained to Dorian behind a very shabby fan, one of her married daughters had come up quite suddenly to stay with her, and to make matters worse, had actually brought her husband with her. "I think it is most unkind of her, my dear," she whispered. "Of course, I go and stay with them every summer after I come from Hamburg." Oh my goodness, I need to cough. Apologies. My oh my, how my voice does not appreciate being used this vigorously, reverently, one of those. Where was I? "Of course I go and stay with them every summer after I come home from Hamburg, but then an old woman like me must have fresh air sometimes. And besides, I really wake them up. You don't know what an existence they lead down there. It is purely unadulterated country life. They get up early because they have so much to do, and go to bed early because they have so little to think about. There has not been a scandal in the neighborhood since the time of Queen Elizabeth, and consequently they all fall asleep after dinner. You shan't sit neither of them. Oh, you shan't sit next to either of them. You shall sit by me and amuse me. Dorian murmured a graceful compliment and looked round the room. Yes, it was certainly a tedious party. Two of the people he had never seen before, and the others consisted of Ernest Harwoodin, one of those middle-aged mediocrities so commonly in London clubs who have no enemies but are thoroughly disliked by their friends. Lady Ruxton, an overdressed woman of 47, with a hooked nose, who was always trying to get herself compromised, but was so particularly plain that to her great disappointment, no one would ever believe anything against her. Miss Erilyn, a pushing nobody with a delightful lisp and a Venetian red hair. Lady Alice Chapman, his hostess's daughter, a dowdy, dull girl with one of those characteristic British faces that, once seen, are never remembered. And her husband, a red-cheeked, white-whiskered creature who, like so many of his class, was under the impression that inordinate sorry, I'm gonna butcher this. Joviality can atone for an entire lack of ideas. Sorry, I must pause again. One moment. Alrighty. I am back. Where were we? Um, he was rather sorry he had come, till Lady Narborough, looking at the great Ormolu, oh, goodness, I'm butchering this. Ormolu? I think it's Ormolu. Gilt clock that sprawled in gaudy curves on the mauve-draped mantel-shelf, exclaimed, "How horrid of Henry Wotton to be so late! I sent round to him this morning on chance, and he promised faithfully not to disappoint me." It was some consolation that Harry was to be there, and when the door opened and he heard his slow, musical voice lending charm to some insincere apology, he ceased to feel bored. But at dinner he could not eat anything. Plate after plate went away untasted. Lady Narborough kept scolding him for what she called an insult to poor Adolphe, who invented the menu specially for you. And now and then Lord Henry looked across at him, wondering at in his silent and abstract manner. From time to time the butler filled his glass with champagne. He drank eagerly, and his thirst seemed to increase. "Dorian," said Lord Henry at last, as the chawed fraud was being handed round, "what is the matter with you tonight? You are quite out of sorts." I believe he is in love, cried Lady Narborough, and that he is afraid to tell me for fear I should be jealous. He is quite right. I certainly should. Dear Lady Narborough, murmured Dorian, smiling, I have not been in love for a whole week, not, in fact, since Madame de Frol left town. How you men can fall in love with that woman, exclaimed the old lady, I really cannot understand. It is simply because she remembers you when you were a little girl, Lady Narborough, said Lord Henry. She is the one link between us and your short frocks. She does not remember my short frocks at all, Lord Henry. But I remember her very well at Vienna. I remember her very well at Vienna 30 years ago, and how décolletée she was then. She is still décolletée, he answered, taking an olive in his long fingers. And when she is in a very smart gown, she looks like an edition deluxe of a bad French novel. She is really wonderful and full of surprises. When her capacity for family affection is extraordinary. When her third husband died, her hair turned quite gold from grief. How can you, Harry? Cried Dorian. It is most romantic explanation, laughed the hostess. But her third husband, Lord Henry, you don't mean to say Ferrol is the fourth? Certainly, Lady Narborough. I don't believe a word of it. Well, ask Mr. Gray. Ask Mr. Gray. He is one of her most intimate friends. Is it true, Mr. Gray? She assures me so, Lady Narborough, said Dorian. I asked her whether, like Margaret de Navarre, she had their hearts embalmed and hung at her girdle. She told me she didn't, because none of them had any hearts at all. 4 husbands, upon my word, that is trop désolé. Trop désolé. Trop désolé. I tell her, said Dorian. Apologies to... I think these are French words, possibly, but apologies to any French speakers. I am very sorry for butchering your language. Okay. Sorry, one moment. I'm just gonna... Is this page all that important? I don't think so. Okay, we're gonna move on. Oh, she is audacious enough for anything, my dear. And what is Ferrol like? I don't know him. The husbands of very beautiful women belong to the criminal classes, said Lord Henry, sipping his wine. Lady Narborough hit him with her fan. Lord Henry, I am not at all surprised that the world says that you are extremely wicked. But what world says that? Asked Lord Henry, elevating his eyebrows. It can only be the next world. This world and I are on excellent terms. Everybody I know says you are very wicked, cried the old lady, shaking her head. Lord Henry looked serious for some moments. It is perfectly monstrous, he said at last. The way people go about nowadays saying things against one behind one's back that are absolutely and entirely true. Isn't he incorrigible? I think it's incorrigible, cried Dorian, leaning forward in his chair. I hope so, said his hostess, laughing. But really, if you all worship Madame de Ferrol in this ridiculous way, I shall have to marry again so as to be in the fashion." "You will never marry again, Lady Narborough," broke in Lord Henry. "You were far too happy. When a woman marries again, it is because she detested her first husband. When a man marries again, it is because he adored his first wife. Women try their luck. Men risk theirs." "Narborough wasn't perfect," cried the old lady. "If he had been, you would not have loved him, my dear lady," was the rejoinder. "Women love us for our defects. If we have enough of them, they will forgive us everything, even our intellects. You will never ask me to dinner again after saying this, I am afraid, Lady Narborough, but it is quite true." "Of course it is true, Lord Henry. If we women did not love you for your defects, where would you all be? Not one of you would ever be married. You would be a set of unfortunate bachelors. No, oh, not, however, that that would alter you much. Nowadays, all the married men live like bachelors, and all the bachelors like married men. Goodness, that is a tongue twister. Oh, apologies, some more French words that I'm going to butcher. "Fin de siècle," murmured Lord Henry. "Fin de globe," answered his hostess. "I wish it were fin de globe," said Dorian with a sigh. "Life is a great disappointment." "Ah, my dear," cried Lady Narborough, putting on her gloves, "don't tell me that you have exhausted life. What a man says that one knows that life has exhausted him. Lord Henry is very wicked, and I sometimes wish that I had been. But you are made to be good. You look so good. I must find you a nice wife. Lord Henry, don't you think that Mr. Grey should get married?" "I am always telling him so, Lady Narborough," said Lord Henry with a bow. "Well, we must look out for a suitable match for him. I shall go through Debrett carefully tonight and draw out a list of all the eligible young ladies." "With their ages, Lady Narborough?" asked Dorian. "Of course, with their ages, slightly edited, but nothing must be done in a hurry. I want it to be what the Morning Post calls a suitable alliance, and I want you both to be happy." "What nonsense people talk about happy marriages!" exclaimed Lord Henry. "A man can be happy with any woman as long as he does not love her." "Ah, what a cynic you are!" cried the old lady, pushing back her chair and nodding to Lady Ruxton. "You must come and dine with me again soon. You are really an admirable tonic, much better than what Sir Andrew prescribes for me. You must tell me what people you would like to meet, though. I want it to be a delightful gathering." "I like men who have a future and women who have a past," he answered. "Or do you think that would make it a petticoat party?" "I fear so," she said, laughing as soon as oh, nope. "I fear so," she said, laughing as she stood up. "A thousand pardons, my dear Lady Ruxton," she added. "I didn't see you hadn't finished your cigarette." "Never mind, Lady Narborough. I smoke a great deal too much. I'm going to limit myself for the future." "Pray don't, Lady Ruxton," said Lord Henry. "Moderation is a fatal thing. Enough is as bad as a meal. More than enough is as good as a feast." Lady Ruxton glanced at him curiously. "You must come and explain that to me some afternoon, Lord Henry. It sounds a fascinating theory," she murmured, and she swept out of the room. "Now, mind you don't stay too long over your politics and scandal," cried Lady Narborough from the door. "If you do, we are sure to squabble upstairs." The men laughed, and Mr. Chapman got up solemnly from the foot of the table and came up to the top. Dorian Gray, sorry, I hit the mic. Apologies. Dorian Gray changed his seat and went and sat by Lord Henry. Mr. Chapman began to talk in a loud about in a loud voice about the situation in the House of Commons. He gofgled at his adversaries. The word doctrinaire, word full of terror to the British mind, reappeared from time to time between his explosions. An alliterative prefix served as an ornament of oratory. He hoisted the Union Jack on the pinnacles of thought, the inherited stupidity of the race. Sound English common sense, he jovially termed it, was shown to be the proper bulwark for society. A smile curved Lord Henry's lips, and he turned round and looked at Dorian. "Are you better, my dear my dear fellow?" he asked. "You seemed rather out of sorts at dinner." "I am quite well, Harry. I am tired, that is all." "You were charming last night. The little Duchess is quite devoted to you. She tells me she is going down to Selby. She has promised to come on the 20th. Is Monmouth to be there too?" "Oh, yes, Harry. He bores me dreadfully, almost as much as he bores her. She is very clever, too clever for a woman. She lacks the indefinable charm of weakness. It is the feet of clay that make the gold of the image precious. Her feet are very pretty, but they are not feet of clay. White porcelain feet, if you like. They have been through the fire, and what fire does not destroy it hardens. She has had experiences." "How long has she been married?" asked Dorian. "An eternity, she tells me. I believe, according to the peerage, it is 10 years, but 10 years with Monmouth must have been like an eternity, with time thrown in. Who else is coming?" "Oh, the Willoughbys, Lord Rugby and his wife, our hostess, Geoffrey Colston, the usual set. I have asked Lord Guillotrain." "I like him," said Lord Henry. "A great many people don't, but I find him charming. He atones for being occasionally somewhat overdressed by being always absolutely overeducated. He is a very modern type. I don't know if he will be able to come, Harry. He must have to go to Monte Carlo with his father. What a nuisance people's lives are. Try and make him come. By the way, Dorian, you ran off very early last night. You left before 11. What did you do afterwards? Did you go straight home?" Dorian glanced at him hurriedly and frowned. "No, Harry," he said at last, "I did not get home till nearly 3. "Did you go to the club?" "Yes," he answered. Then he bit his lip. "No, I don't mean that. I didn't go to the club. I walked about. I forget what I did. How inquisitive you are, Harry. You always want to know what one has been doing. I always want to forget what I have been doing. I came in at 2:30, if you wish to know the exact time. I had left my latchkey at home, and my servant had to let me in. If you want any corroborative evidence on the subject, you can ask him." A little bit of oversharing, no, Dorian? That was close. Lord Henry shrugged his shoulders. "My dear fellow, as if I cared. Let us go up to the drawing-room. No, sherry, thank you. Mr. Chapman, something has happened to you, Dorian. Tell me what it is. You are not yourself tonight." "Don't mind me, Harry. I am irritable and out of temper. I shall come round and see you tomorrow, or next day. Make my excuses to Lady Narborough. I shan't go upstairs. I shall go home. I must go home." "All right, Dorian. I dare say I shall see you tomorrow at tea-time. The Duchess is coming." "I will try to be there, Harry," he said, leaving the room as he drove back to his own house. He was conscious that the sense of terror he thought he had strangled had come back to him. Lord Henry's casual questioning had made him lose his nerve for the moment, and he wanted his nerve still. Things that were dangerous had to be destroyed. He winced. He hated the idea of even touching them. Yet it had to be done. He realized that, and when he had locked the door of his library, he opened the secret press into which he had thrust Basil Hallward's coat and bag. A huge fire was blazing. He piled another log on it. The smell of the singed clothes and burning leather was horrible. It took him 3/4 of an hour to consume everything. At the end, he felt faint and sick, and having lit some Algerian pastils and a pierced copper brazier, he bathed his hands and forehead with a cool, musk-scented vinegar. Suddenly he started. His eyes grew strangely bright, and he gnawed nervously at his underlip. Between two of the windows stood a large... Oh, what's happening? A large Florentine cabinet, made out of ebony and inlaid with ivory and blue lapis. He watched it as though it were a thing that could fascinate and make afraid, as though it held something that he longed for and yet almost loathed. His breath quickened. A mad craving came over him. He lit a cigarette and then threw it away. His eyelids drooped till the long fringed lashes almost touched his cheek. But he still watched the cabinet. At last he got up from the sofa on which he had been lying, went over to it, and having unlocked it, touched some hidden spring. A triangular drawer passed slowly out. His fingers moved instinctively towards it, dipped in, and closed on something. It was a small Chinese box of black and gold dust lacquer, elaborately wrought, the sides patterned with curved waves, and the silken cords hung in round crystals, and tasseled in plated metal threads. He opened it. Inside was a green paste, waxy in luster, the odorous curiously heavy and the odor curiously heavy and persistent. He hesitated for some moments, with a strangely immobile smile upon his face, then shivered. Though the atmosphere of the room was terribly hot, he drew himself up and glanced at the clock. It was 20 minutes to 12. He put the box back, shutting the cabinet doors as he did so, and went into his bedroom. As midnight was striking bronze blows upon the dusky air, Dorian Gray, dressed commonly and with a muffled wrapper around his throat, crept quietly out of his house. In Bond Street he found a hansom with a good horse. He hailed it, and in a low voice gave the driver an address. The man shook his head. "It is too far for me," he muttered. "Here is a sovereign for you," said Dorian. "You shall have another if you drive fast." "All right, sir," answered the man. "You will be there in an hour." And after his fare had got in, he turned his horse round and drove rapidly towards the river. Ooh, what's happening next? How many pages are in chapter 16? Not too many. Oh, 17's even shorter. Okay. I think that is it for right now that we are going to read. Apologies if I got a little bit loud there. I was battling the voice wanting to go away. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed this reading. I believe we read from chapter 14 to 15, or through 14 and 15. Yes. There are so many dog ears in this book. All important parts, I presume. Well, at least I think. Alrighty. Thank you so much for listening. Okay. Have a good day. Have a good night. Have a good midday. Remember to stay safe, have fun, and be kind. Salamat Baya. So much for watching or listening. And I will see you in the next one. Toodles for now. Goodbye.